welcome once again to Character Study. I am John Fortt.
I'm Dave Tieche.
Yeah, I think eventually we get there. We're both talking at the beginning. John Fortt and Dave Tieche, best friends for 30 years and counting. And I'm a journalist. He's a pastor. And we thought it would be a cool idea to go through the Bible, looking not just at chapter and verse, but looking at the people, looking at characters, and really examining who they are as people, how God relates to them, and what that means about how we relate to God. So we have been in Genesis really going through an Abraham cycle, Dave, which is an area of, expertise is a strong word when we're talking about the Bible. So I'll say intense interest and deep study for you.
I've done some work, yes.
You've
More
done
work
some good
than
work.
the average human, perhaps.
Yes. In your master's study on Abraham, which I appreciated quite a bit. And so we've talked about Abraham, Sarah, we've talked about Hagar, we've talked about Lot for a couple of different sessions. We're still talking about really all of those people, but today, in a bit of a twist, as we talk about them all and Lot, we're going to really talk about Lot's wife in the sense that Genesis 19 and the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is a horror movie in a chapter.
100%.
And I think we're going to unpack what I mean by that. There are certain elements, certain beats that happen in a horror movie where, there's this setting, and then there's kind of this sin, and then there's a sort of giving into this sin, and then that has consequences that then peak in some enormous and horrific cataclysmic consequence that we're all shocked by. Most horror movies go this way. And then there's a kind of calming, or perhaps maybe we've gotten away from the monster and then it comes back. Right? And it's like, oh no, there's going to be a sequel because it's not over. Right. And I will argue that Genesis 19 has all of those elements of a horror movie. So give me your take, Dave, in a little bit of how we got here.
Oh, yeah.
Abraham and Lot.
Recap a little bit. Yeah, a little.
They're relatives. Abraham's the uncle, Lot's the nephew. They were both doing quite well, but their herdsmen were getting into a bit of conflict, and Abraham said, look, this isn't good. We're family. We shouldn't have these kinds of problems, right? So you pick the land that you want, and I'll go the other way. Lot picked the good-looking land that happened to be where the bad people lived, but he didn't care about that.
Because it was lush, and it looked like Eden, right? That's the whole thing, yep.
He took the low ground, literally. Lot did. Abraham took the high ground, literally. And now we find ourselves in Genesis 19 and what's going on.
Yeah, well, and also remember, and then God shows up in 18, and Abraham's near the great trees of vision. That's what the word Mamre means. He's about to have another vision. And God shows up with these two angels, and he's just like, hey, listen. And then Abraham welcomes him, it says, he turns to his wife and says, get 3 seahs of flour, get some bread, make some veal, and let's have a meal. And so God's like, wow, this is really great hospitality. Thank you for this.
Apparently, and then as angels can eat, because 3 seahs is a lot of flour.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's 60 pounds of flour. That is a lot of breadsticks. I'm not sure you need that much bread, but that's what 3 seahs. Anyway. So then what happens is God's about to leave, and he's like, "Shall I reveal to Abraham what I'm about to do?" Like kind of this rhetorical question. He turns and says, "Abraham, here's what's up." And then in the really powerful verse, he says, I've chosen Abraham. He's going to direct his children and his household to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord's going to bring about for Abraham what he's promised him. And then he says, there's this outcry in Sodom, and it's horrible. And I'm going to investigate to see if it's as bad as I thought. And all of a sudden, Abraham, what he's thinking about, who's in Sodom,
right? Because earlier in Genesis, he just saved that boy's life, rode out with his special ops, defeated some kings,
That
bought
was a
him
great
back.
episode.
It was,
Yeah, that
I
was
love
part I
that.
would have just
Yeah.
skipped. I would have just skipped over that, but you're 100% right. Abraham goes and gets Lot, who's been kind of swept up in the because he's near Sodom, right?
You,
And
you
now
live you
it's
live
gonna
with
happen
sketchy
again.
people, right? You lie down with dogs, you get up with fleas. You live around sketchy people, sketchy stuff happens to you. This is
Yeah,
what we're
yeah.
seeing. And Abraham's trying again and again to
Hmm.
rescue Lot from the consequences of his values choices.
Yeah. Which I love. I love that. The way you said that. But then what's interesting, I thought I was thinking about this too. The first two times God kind of shows up to Abraham. By the way, God showing up to humans, big deal. It's a big deal in the story. God's talking with him. The first two times Abraham has questions about his own life and his own destiny. Like, how am I going to have kids? Is this ever going to happen? We're getting older here. And that's totally valuable. It's just like, hey, listen, did I hear you right? But this time, it's not about Abraham, right? This is about other people and a whole city, in fact. And so Abraham starts to talk to God. And we have this, people call it bartering, but it's not bartering. Um, he basically, Abraham approaches God tenuously. And in the narrative, it does it six times. And that's important because the rule of threes in storytelling, Goldilocks and the three bears, or, the what is it, the three billy goats gruff, or whatever the rule of threes is.
I
um
mean, you got the three little pigs too.
oh, sure.
There are
It
three
keeps,
approaches.
yeah. And even like rhetorical speakers, like I think about like Abraham Lincoln in A Government of the People, by the People, for the People. That rule of threes is really critical. And basically in this storytelling, Abraham does rule of threes twice. He goes 1 2 3, 1 2 3, and every time he approaches God, and by the way, he approaches God, which is saying something again. There's something really rich in that. He's like, hey, what, you're not really going to destroy the whole city because there's some good people in there. Like, what if there's like 50 people in there? And it's like you can't fail the whole group just because there's some slackers. This is a group project. There's some people who put some real work into this, right? And that's not fair. And so God's like, well, okay. Well, hold on. My earbuds just died.
Hmm.
Sorry. We're gonna,
No, that's all right.
I'm sorry.
No problem. I am expert actually at continuing to talk when things go a little awry because I do live TV, and the idea is to just keep going as if it's natural. Something I want us to get to in this also:
Sure.
the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is a mini Noah moment,
Totally. Yeah,
right?
the wickedness is so, and that goes back to Genesis 6,
Yeah,
which is this sad, one of the more tragic moments, right?
there are elements in here of people not listening to the rescue. There are elements in here of the one who saves children not going along with the salvation plan. There are elements here
Yeah.
worth pondering.
That's a good callback because in Genesis 6, which is one of the saddest stories in all the Bible, it says that everywhere, God looked down on earth and saw that everywhere, all the people's only thoughts were evil all the time. And he regretted, he had lamented in him, in his person, that he had even made man. And I started thinking, sometimes, we look at the news, and I look at the news, and there's just so much evil and wickedness and destruction and war and poverty and all those things. Sometimes you start to wonder, is there any good in this collective thing? And there is.
There's
There's little.
also there's also an element of misplaced generativity here. I will argue that sort of repeats in Genesis earlier, around Genesis 6, as the Noah story is beginning. There's this whole issue of the sons of God and the daughters of men uh, getting together in a way that they should not. Lots of debate about exactly what that means,
Mhm.
but whatever it means, there's this idea that people are trying to become great in a way that is
Mhm.
outside of the order that God has set. One could also go back to the Tower of Babel and argue that that's another way, through human physical and intellectual effort, that people
Mhm.
are trying to become great in a way that is different than what God has set. And
Yeah.
once again with Sodom and the way that we see the people of Sodom behaving. However you interpret this, and the our goal here is not to get political or you know culturally start to overlap whatever cultural norms are. I think the message that we get is that the people of Sodom are laying down behavioral and and carnal, trying to establish behavioral and carnal norms that are outside of God's plan and that
Yeah.
line up with the idea of generativity, sexuality, etc. And so to me, there's some parallels here going throughout Genesis of when people get these ideas about their agenda, about what it means to be fulfilled, what it means to grow, what it means to excel, that's actually outside of God's plan,
Yeah.
boy, some horrible things can happen.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we talked in a previous podcast about wicked and righteous, and the idea of righteousness is you use whatever you have, your whole personhood, um, your muchness, your meod, as it says in the Hebrew text, to help people. You use it to help people, so you disadvantage yourself in order to help people. But wickedness is taking from people to advantage yourself. And as I was reflecting on our conversation last week, because there's all sorts of condemnations of Sodom and Gomorrah throughout the rest of the scriptures. Ezekiel has some of the other prophets have some, and even in the New Testament. And it's basically a godless place where wickedness runs rampant. And what worse way to show that, or what better way to show that, is the wickedness of what happens when the angels come into Sodom and they're trying to take from these visitors. They're using sexuality to take, and we all know that when you use sexuality to take, or you try to take someone's sexuality from them, and use them like that, that's evil, that's wicked. We all know that.
Mm.
Even in our modern society, the idea of consent is paramount for the beginning of morality with sexuality, right? So
And
that's critical.
and that's key because Genesis 19 begins and ends with that idea of people trying to remove consent and
Yeah,
get what they want
yeah,
through that idea of generativity. Hey,
yeah,
I'm gonna become great. I'm gonna continue my line, my idea, fulfill
yeah.
my desire in the way that I want, regardless of what you want.
So right before we read 19, I want you to read it. There's this back and forth with Abraham and God, and he's like, "What if there's 50 people? I mean, clearly you're righteous, you're a good God. You're not going to wipe them away. That wouldn't be fair. The world
Yeah.
would see that's not fair." And God's like,
What if there's a home church in
"Yeah."
essence, 50
And he's like,
people?
"What?" And then so God's like, "Fine, 40. If there's 50, I won't do it." And he's like, "What about 45? What about 40? What about 30? What about 20?" And then he gets
What
down,
about a small group?
to 10.
Yeah.
Okay, now I was
What if
thinking about
there's
this.
one life group?
No, right, but
Maybe
yeah.
maybe the church itself isn't so great, but what if there's one life group in that church, a couple of families?
So let's go ahead and think about this for a second, okay? 10. 10. Okay, that's this. Okay. So who does Abraham know in there? Lot's wife. He's got, I think, two daughters. One, two. What's up with the balloons?
I don't know. I guess when you put fingers up, balloons.
Is this up?
Like I'm 4 years
I'm,
old.
I'm 4 years old. I'm, 4 I'm 4 years old. Oh, that was a great callback. So Lot, his
For
wife,
those
his
for
two
those who are
daughters,
listening to this, sorry. For those who are listening to this and not seeing the video, we're doing this on video, and Dave put up four fingers, and some
some
animated
balloons went
balloons
up.
started rising up, and it was very strange. All right, go
Some
ahead.
effects. Anyway, that was weird. So Lot, okay, his wife, his two daughters, their two husbands, and then Abraham. We're like in that's seven, right? So really, Abraham's like, I've got to be able to get to 10. Lot has obvious. So, and that's just the background. We'll get into the now. Let's get into the story. So you can go ahead and read it because your reading voice is so much more mellifluous than mine.
Oh, well, thank you. Genesis 19. The two angels came to Sodom at evening. Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. Lot saw them and rose up to meet them. He bowed himself with his face to the earth, and he said, "See now, my lords, please come into your servant's house, stay all night, wash your feet, and you can rise up early and go on your way." They said, "No, but we will stay in the street all night." He urged them greatly, and they came in with him and entered into his house. He made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, surrounded the house, both young and old, all the people from every quarter. They called to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came into you this night? Bring them out to us, that we may have sex with them." Lot went out to them through the door and shut the door after himself. He said, "Please, my brothers, don't act so wickedly. See now, I have two virgin daughters. Please let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them what seems good to you. Only don't do anything to these men, because they have come under the shadow of my roof." They said, "Stand back." Then they said, "This one fellow came in to live as a foreigner, and he appoints himself a judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." They pressed hard on the man Lot and came near to break the door, but the men reached out their hand and brought Lot into the house to them and shut the door. They struck the men who were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. The men said to Lot, "Do you have anybody else here, sons in law, your sons, your daughters, and whomever you have in the city? Bring them out of the place, for we will destroy this place, because the outcry against them has grown so great before Yahweh that Yahweh has sent us to destroy it." So, yeah, um, pretty awful,
Pretty awful.
pretty awful. And Lot goes on to warn his in-laws, who, uh, I guess we know, right, are not the spouses of his daughters, but pledged to marry his daughters, his
Right.
sons-in-law who were pledged to marry
Pledged.
his daughters.
So I mean that pretty much they're betrothed. So
Yeah,
there's a sense of connection, obviously, with his. So he's got two daughters, right? I'm making sure that I got my numbers right.
yeah.
Yeah, I have two daughters, right? Uh,
And he
yeah,
seemed to his sons-in-law to be joking. So here we have, similar to the Noah story, where he's building this ark and he's saying, "Hey,
yeah,
people, bad things coming, for better find some high ground or get in the boat." And people are like, "Ha ha ha, look at this idiot, what's he talking about?" Which suggests, this reminds me of something that C.S. Lewis has said about heaven and not heaven,
huh?
right? The idea that, to those who are not seeking to follow God, being with God, going to seems like an objectionable thing. So they're actually going to run away from it. They're going to run away from salvation.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not that God is pushing away people who God is rejecting. It's that people are rejecting God and rejecting salvation. And arguably, we're seeing that play out both in Noah's story, when people reject the idea of the
yeah,
coming flood, and in
yeah,
Sodom, when people are rejecting the idea, people who could be saved, the extensions, potential extensions of Lot's family, are rejecting the idea of salvation because it seems ridiculous to them.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and just his sons-in-law thought he was joking. It reminds me of all the times when people just don't take God or his prophets seriously. Right? It happens over and over and over and over and over again in the New and Old Testaments, and it never turns out well. Um, it just never does. And that also says something about the character of Lot's sons-in-law. But also we see something. I'm wondering what your thoughts are. What do we see about Lot in this exchange? Because
Well,
Lot's character is revealed as well, right?
there are a number of question marks for me here, and that's this horror movie framing is, in I don't know, modern, I don't watch a lot of it, but there always seems to be this idea that, well, because somebody, ran off skinny dipping, or they went off, this group of teenagers went off into the woods after curfew and they weren't supposed to, those are the ones who are going to get it first, right? Because they sinned, right? They did the wrong
Some
thing. They went,
transgression, right?
yeah, they went
They
outside
deserve
this
it.
circle of protection. This idea that maybe there was a safer space, but somehow they align themselves with the forces that are in danger, that are under whatever curse has been put out there. And so you kind of know, oh. And in
Like
this sense,
I think about like Jaws, like the opening scene, the girl's hooking up with a guy, takes off her clothes, he goes skinny dipping in the ocean, and then
exactly,
what happens?
right?
She gets eaten by the shark.
She gets eaten by the shark. Of
You know,
course she does.
happens all the time, right? Yeah.
Right. And by implication, we're watching this scene, maybe a little too interested. And so now we are implicated in, okay, does that mean I'm going to get eaten by a shark?
Yeah.
Because I thought that idea of running off on the beach was exciting.
Yeah.
Maybe the shark is going to get me too, because
Yeah.
maybe I've got a little of that in me. And I think there's some of that playing
Well,
out
that's
in
the
this.
point of story, right? Is for us to enter into the story.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
we know that Lot has already literally placed himself out of the circle of protection by leaving Abraham, right? By
Yeah.
picking this land that looked good to him, but for the wrong reasons. He's here with these wicked people. So you sort of know that Lot has chosen to live near the pet cemetery, right? And he's chosen to bury his cat there. And you're kind of like, no, Lot, don't bury the cat in the pet cemetery, because, right? If you,
Yeah.
Stephen King reference, but he's done it.
Right.
And
Right.
so now you wonder who else is implicated in this. He's made this really frightening and disturbing attempt at barter using his virgin daughters. And now we see that his sons-in-law to be are not, they don't have the best moral judgment.
They don't.
Right? And you
Yeah. They
wonder,
ignore the word of the Lord, right? Yeah.
is that because these are the guys who Lot has picked for his daughters? Did his daughters pick guys like this? Right?
It kind of doesn't matter in this case, right? It's just whatever has happened. It looks like the city of Sodom is so wicked that wickedness is infiltrated and penetrated and corrupted Lot, his and his the people that his daughters either chose or are going to marry. So it's not good. It's
But
bad. It's
you kind of hope Lot's not infected, right?
right.
He's been in it,
Right.
but
That's the
maybe
other
if you
thing in
get,
horror movies. Oh,
yeah,
don't be infected. Don't be infected. And it's like, no, he's infected, you know?
maybe if you get him out of Sodom, maybe if you get him out of Sodom and Gomorrah, you're destroying the city. Maybe he'll be saved. Maybe he can be like Noah, start fresh, and that evil won't be coursing through his veins. These
Right.
ideas about taking sexually from those who haven't consented, these ideas of looking back longingly on evil behavior that's not of God. Maybe if we get Lot out of there, right, and far from it, he'll change back to normal. He won't become a zombie.
Right.
Right?
And this is what we see in Noah. I love the callback to Noah, because Noah, right? He's in the ark. Oh, okay. All the evils destroyed, evils eradicated, right? And then Noah lands, makes an altar to the Lord. You're like, oh, good. We're going to return to the priestly presence. And then Noah Noah gets drunk and also bad stuff happens. And we
Starts with
see,
the
oh no,
start.
the monster has smuggled itself onto the ark, right? It's like, and this is the scariest movie in the entire world for me, but like Alien, like Sigourney Weaver gets in the escape pod and she's like, I'm safe, right? And then all of a sudden the monster's in the escape pod with her, right? And it's just terrifying,
Yeah,
right?
like curled up in the AC.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the same way, this is what's happening here. Because like, look what happens. If you continue on, the angels are like, "Do you have anyone else here? Get them out of here. We're going to destroy this place." And then they say, "The outcry to the Lord against its people is so great. We're going to destroy it." Right.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, who's reading this? The people in Exodus who had just been rescued from Pharaoh. They know a little bit about God sending judgment down on evil, right?
Well, they should. They also know a little bit about looking back longingly at the place that they weren't supposed to really stay in, and be like,
Well,
"Oh, wasn't it nice?" And
we're
so
fast
maybe
forwarding too much. We're fast forwarding too much, but
we
that's
are,
a
we are, we
hyperlink
are.
forward. That's going to
It's a
happen.
hyperlink forward. And
Yeah,
just to give a little context, what we understand historically is that Moses actually wrote down these first 5 books of
right.
the Bible, the
He's trying to
Pentateuch.
instruct the people who have just been released about who God is and the story and their story, right? And their God,
Right.
right?
Right. So this is, out of Egypt, getting ready to go into the promised land, but not there yet because Moses himself never really physically made it in. He's writing down this history, this sort of God. Who is God? What is our relationship with God like? What are some of the good decisions that people have made dealing with God? What are some of the bad decisions people have made? And yeah, one imagines, okay, here are people who have come out of a bad place and they're supposed to be going to a good place. And we know, in Exodus and beyond, they keep looking back, and maybe we should go back to the bad place. And here's a guy. Okay, well, gather around, children. Let me tell you
Yeah.
a story about some other people who wanted to stay in a bad place.
Yeah, pretty quickly. And what's interesting, yeah, if I mean we're not there yet, but in Exodus, the people of Israel who have just been rescued from 400 years of oppression underneath a terrible Pharaoh, they like remember slavery, remember how good the food was, and Moses is like, what are you even talking about? Like he gets so mad, and God doesn't like it either. So anyway, that's what are they longing for, right? Good food. Remember how cushy it was. It's just like the same thing that Lot's after, like good food and cushy. You know what I mean? That kind of feel.
And it's
Well,
magnetic, right?
yeah,
Whatever it was that drew Lot to the place, even after all of this horror is unfolding and the men of the city have threatened to do horrible things to Lot and his guests, etc. We go in chapter 19 to verse 15. When the
yes.
morning came, then the angels hurried Lot, saying, "Get up, take
Hurry,
your wife and you." Now, first of all, when the morning came, I like to think I'd have been out of there immediately. Get your go bag. Let's get out of here right
kidding.
now. But apparently, Lot's like, let me get 40 winks first. And then maybe in the morning, after I pack a lunch, then we'll get on the road. And it's like, okay.
Well, and you see, well, and you right, and you see that too. I think the people of Egypt who are reading this would have said, "Oh, remember when we had to flee Egypt? It was like remember the middle of the night, the
Right.
plagues came, and then they're like they got the heck out. They left so fast they couldn't even let their bread leaven. Right?
Right.
That's why
Yeah.
Jewish people eat unleavened bread. It's
Well, the
like get
Passover. Yeah.
yourself the heck away from the monster. You don't
Mm-hmm.
stick around.
It's like the
So
first trail mix. Yeah. Unleavened bread, just dry stuff that you can carry in a pouch. Just get up out of there.
but
So,
that says something about the heart of the person too, right?
yeah,
Like, um, but look what happens. It says when Lot hesitated. I have the word hesitated. I don't. I'm in the NIV. What word do you have in 16 verse 16?
I have lingered,
Okay.
cranberry style.
Do you have to? Do you have to?
He did not have to, for
He
the
did
record.
not have to let it linger.
He should not have let it linger.
Yeah.
So yeah, the angels say, "Get up, take your wife and two daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in
Yeah.
the iniquity of the city." What we think that means when we're reading verse 15 is, "Lest you be physically consumed by the fire coming down from heaven in
Yeah.
the and yet I think the question
Double
that
word
arises,
on play. Word play.
yes, later on
Yeah.
is the iniquity of the city inside them, so that even after they leave it, it might consume them. Hold that in
Yeah.
your head, dear listener. But he lingered, and the men grabbed his hand, his wife's hand, and his two daughters' hands. I had to visualize this. I was like, how many hands do these angels have that they can grab? I was like, okay, they get Lot. One gets Lot with one hand and gets his wife in the other hand, and then the other one gets one daughter in one hand and the other daughter. Okay. That works. Four hands, four
But they
people.
have to be. I have the word. The men grasped the hands and led the two daughters safely out of the city.
Yes,
There's a sense of they have to be dragged out of the dang city. Like
yes,
how foolish are these people, right?
right. And Yahweh being merciful to him, and they took him out, set him outside of the city. So he's outside. It came to pass when they had taken him out that he said, "Escape for your life. Don't look behind you, and don't stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest you be consumed." Lot said to them, "Oh, not so, my lord." Now it's Lot's turn to try to bargain. "See now, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have magnified your loving kindness, which you have shown to me in saving my life. I can't escape to the mountain, lest evil overtake me and I die." Right? So he's saying, I know better than the angels here. The angels have said, "Escape to the mountains, lest you be consumed." But he says, "I can't escape to the mountain, lest evil overtake me and I die." I know better than the angels here. See now, this city is near to flee to, and it's a little one, just a little city. Oh, let me escape there. Isn't it a little one? And my soul will live. He said to him, Behold, I have granted your request concerning
That's
this
the angel. The angel's
thing
now talking.
also.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There's some
Now,
he's and backs and forth.
to me, there's some genie language here, right? Because Lot did not say that my soul and my wife's soul and my daughter's souls may live. He said, and my soul will live.
Oh yeah, my nefesh haya, my being. Yeah, that's what
Right?
my life.
Right?
My life. Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
Mine.
yeah,
And the angel said, all right, you can go to that city. Now, it seems to me that they said, and it seems to me that his wife and daughters are probably overhearing him
sure.
bargaining for staying closer to this place. So I wonder if he has some culpability, right? In rather than just get the heck out of there, the reason why his wife is about to look back at Sodom, and the reason why later in this chapter his daughters are going to do what they do. So he bargains. They say, Hurry up, escape there, for I can't do anything until you get there. The name of the city was called Zoar. The sun had risen on the earth when Lot came to Zoar. Then Yahweh rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from Yahweh out of the sky. He overthrew those cities, all the plains, all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew on the ground. But Lot's wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt.
Yeah. So and I think what there's so many lessons here. First of all, you didn't even talk about this. The mountains symbolically are the place where the Lord dwells. God meets with Moses on the mountain. He met with Abraham on the mountain. The Garden of Eden is a mountain, and the rivers are flowing out of it. Mountain is where the mountain of God. Jerusalem is on the mountain. That's the mountain of God. Mountains are the high place where God Yahweh meets with His people. So there's a metaphor here: flee to the mountains, or you'll be destroyed.
And
Right?
but the plains are fertile, right? In the carnal way of thinking,
Right.
you want to be in the plain,
Yeah.
right? The
But then
mountain
what?
is a
Yeah.
place where you flee to. That's where Elijah goes, right?
Right.
When Jezebel is
Trying
breathing
to
out
kill him.
those
Yeah.
threats, he goes to the mountain. He's got to be fed there. It's the wilderness. It's depressing, and
Yeah.
Lot's like, I don't. I'm fragile. I don't want to be depressed. Let me go to this little city. I like the cities. I'm a city guy. I can't make it out there in the mountains, even though I'm supposed to have faith that God's going to take care of me.
Yeah. And I think it's an effective metaphor. It's like, hey, go to where God is, and He's like, can we not? And I just think that this again shows the heart of Lot. And then of course, now we're really trying to talk about Lot's wife, but Lot's wife really is a stand-in, I think, or an additional kind of foil for who Lot is. And she turns around and looks back. They hesitate. They have to be dragged out of the city. They stay as long as they possibly can. This is all indicative of a deep character issue and a deep unwillingness to listen to Yahweh, care about Him, or love Him.
Here's why I think Lot's wife is the main character in this chapter. Yes, she's the one to physically turn around and look and become a pillar of salt. But this is that moment of destruction where you think, oh my goodness, the monster got one of them. We know the monster had to get one, I guess. We thought they were going to get out, but oh my, that's horrible. Pillar of salt, like Thanos snap, turn into. But at least now everybody else in the family knows you don't turn around, right? Now they're fully inoculated. Lot's wife kind of had the virus inside her, it seems like, because she looked back. It got one of the family, but now at least everybody else is safe, right? But they still don't go to the mountain. Lot went up, verse 30, out of Zoar and lived in the mountain.
The idea is like that this shocked them into moral and like a moral awakening, like a spiritual awakening, right?
Almost.
That's that's
Almost.
that's the hope that we have, right?
That's the hope, because he still went into Zoar first, like he said he was going to, while all the destruction was happening. But then he went up out of Zoar and lived in the mountains, and his two daughters with him, for he was afraid to live in Zoar.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure what's happened here. God said, you can live, okay, you can live in Zoar, even though you should have gotten up into the mountains. And so he didn't go to the mountains, he went to Zoar. But then, instead of staying in Zoar, like the angel said he could, he said, now I'm scared, even though they've told me I could be here, and I'm going to go into the mountains like they told me to do in the first place. The issue to me, it seems, part of the issue here is that even though they've said they're going to save his life, he lacks faith so entirely that he wouldn't go to the mountains when they told him to, bargained for Zoar. Then he went to Zoar and he lacked faith, so he couldn't stay in Zoar because he was afraid and went into the mountains.
Yeah,
So
he's
now
like
we think,
you're saying he's like double-minded. This guy's
yeah,
he's afraid to be on the mountain with God because of what that might mean, what he might have to give up. He's afraid to be in the city because he's seen what happens. But he's not willing to like actually. I guess what's the right word? I guess when you're standing straddling a fence, it's uncomfortable for everybody. You know what I'm saying?
it's like the person in the Exorcist movie who like grabs the cross out of fear and tries to hold it up in right the possessed person's face, not because they have any faith, but because they think out of just the physical act of doing this thing, it will mean something. They don't understand that
Yeah,
the power is in faith,
yeah, it's
not in
inside. Yeah,
physicality.
yeah,
Right? So he's trying to physically position himself. First, he's physically positioned himself to fulfill his carnal desires. Now he's trying to physically position himself to escape the consequences of his carnal desires.
yeah. And then I love your point about going back to Noah because we have another callback link to Noah in the very next verse. It has to do with wine and drunkenness, which is the very same thing that happened with Noah. And only this time it's like, I would argue, even grosser and weirder and more awful.
You'll get no counter argument from me.
Yes.
Um, he lived in a cave with his two daughters. The firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, which I think is probably supposed to remind us of Abraham. Abraham is also old. And there is not a man in the earth to come in to us in the way of all the earth. Come, let's make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him that we may preserve our father's family line. Now, part of the reason why I think this chapter is about Lot's wife is that if Lot's wife were still around,
Mm-hmm.
this probably wouldn't be happening because Lot's wife would be with him in the evening, and it would have to be part of this plot to get him drunk. And of course, she wouldn't do that, right? She would be a do not do this thing, we'll figure something out type figure.
Yeah.
But because of the compromises, the culture of compromise, in part that Lot has set in motion in his family, his wife looked back, his daughters are without motherly guidance, he's without protection in the evening when this plot comes against him to take from him without his consent.
Yeah. So they drink they get him drunk, and then they sleep with him, and he was not even aware of it. So and so both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father, which is just this level of dysfunction has reached new levels, right?
I don't even want to talk too much about the
Sure.
whole incest thing, but
It's
I
gross.
will say
Well,
the
it's a
the
violation
impulse,
of God's commandments, right?
that
Yeah.
violation that chapter 19 started with, that horrified us in Sodom, that was the reason they had to get out, that the men of the city were like, who are these guests? Bring them out to us. We're going to have our way with them.
Yes.
The whole thing they're trying to escape at the end of chapter 19, the
It's found its way into the
daughters
cave.
who had been bargaining chips are now infected with
Yeah.
that same taking disease that you've been mentioning this whole time. See, desire, take.
Take.
Now
Yeah.
they're infected with it. They're the zombies, and they say, "See, our father is old." Right?
Oh, it gets worse though.
Mm.
In 37, it says the older daughter has a son. She named him Moab. He's the father of the Moabites, and the younger daughter had a son named him Ben-Amin. He's the father of the Ammonites. Later on in the story, the Moabites and the Ammonites would become arch enemies of Israel and would cause tremendous problems just historically across the globe and through the rest of the story. So you could trace the monsters now duplicating, replicating, and just more and more and more and more to overtake. This is how the Israelites would have read it. The Hebrew people, they would have seen, oh man, oh, that's where the genesis of this sin happened then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
So, um, definite, definite shock and disgust and concern in the themes here. Specifically, the violation, sexual violation,
yeah,
horrible. Underneath all of that, and is this idea of focusing on faith and staying close to God, regardless of how something physically, materially looks, versus choosing your own way and becoming addicted to the things of the world.
there's one more thing I want to point out too, because Abraham's like, look, maybe there's 10 people, maybe there's 10 people here. And what's fascinating about that is he's basically saying maybe if there were 10 faithful covenant partners with God who practice justice and righteousness, if there's only 10, that's enough to infect the city in a good way for
Mm.
Yahweh, in a way that basically staves off destruction. It's like a preservative. Like later on in the New Testament, Jesus would say, "You're the salt of the earth." Salt's a preservative. It staves off decay and infection. Those kinds in the ancient world, that's what it wasn't just for flavor. It staved off decay and infection. And Jesus is like, you're like the salt of the earth, right? And you can actually preserve, and just a little bit of salt actually preserves things from decay and death. And this would become very much a part of the Jewish thought, that just a few righteous people can actually preserve or bring about justice and righteousness for an entire group. And what I wanted to point out is there's this other moment where Jesus says the exact same thing. He says, like, the work of God here on planet Earth is through humans who are faithful covenant partners. That's our goal. And he says, like yeast that a woman took and mixed in to flour, and that worked all through the dough. And Jesus uses a very specific amount of flour. He says, like a yeast that a woman took and mixed into 3 seahs of flour. And this is the only 2 times in the Bible, these 3 seahs, which is 60 pounds of flour. Jesus is making a direct callback.
Mm.
So I did the research, because I was like, how much yeast would it take to leaven 3 seahs of flour? And you need 3 packages of yeast, which is 2.25 teaspoons for every 5 pounds, or 17.5 cups. So for 60 pounds of flour, you need a half a cup of yeast. So 60 pounds of flour, half a cup of yeast. That comes out to a 1-373 ratio of yeast to flour. So like in a city of San Jose, which is 2 million people, that'd be about 5,300 people to leaven a city of the county of 2 million. It doesn't take a lot of faithful covenant partners to bring about God's redemptive work in a city. The yeast does a powerful leavening agent, and all you need is a few. And the tragedy of Sodom and Gomorrah is there are not 10.
Yeah.
There's not 10. Lot doesn't do it. His wife doesn't do it. His daughters don't do it. They're infected. The sons-in-laws, are they even there? Like, no, they're not even there. They get swept away. There's not 10 people in the city. That's the tragedy. And so it should make us think, wow, if there was 10 people in Sodom that practiced Siddiqah and Mishpah, maybe things could have been different. Maybe I can be one of the 10 in my city. Maybe I can be the kind of person who is faithful and practices justice and righteousness, is meaningfully connected to God, and does not do and works against the outcry, is non-cooperative with evil, and works for God's good in my world. That's what Abraham is. That's his model. And Lot is the opposite. Lot's wife is the opposite. Like you said, I love what you said, they're infected, And look, we're all infected, but we can be inoculated, like with God's help, right?
That's quite an observation. And I have long wondered in this passage, was it just that there weren't enough righteous people in the city, or were there not any? Lot and his family, were they righteous, kinda, but just didn't have critical mass and made a series of wrong decisions at a critical time? Or were they just beneficiaries of imputed righteousness, of imputed from Abraham? Abraham
Yeah.
cared about Lot, and that's the reason why he got out, not
Yeah.
because Lot had any righteousness himself. It's interesting to me. We're not going to talk about it this time, but in the very next chapter, Abraham makes the exact same move, passing off Sarah as his sister, as he did back in Egypt. And you would think learned from that that's not the way to do it, right? So,
Mhm.
lest we think through contrast, oh boy, Abraham's perfect now, and Lot and his family, boy, they're just all bad. Very next chapter, Abraham's doing something where it's like, okay, palm to the forehead. Are we here again with Abraham? But it's
Right.
nowhere near, clearly, the scale of what Lot and
Yeah.
his family have been into.
Yeah. Yeah. And Lot goes back and forth. But in this case, Lot's righteous. You know, he pleads for the city. Abraham cares about a city filled with people. He doesn't want to see it destroyed, and he pleads for it. And what, all the commentators are saying is it's prophetic reenactment. He's not trying to change the heart of God. He's actually revealing the heart of God. Because later on, another figure would stand over a city and plead that it wouldn't be destroyed. And that was Jesus pleading over Jerusalem. Like, how I've longed to gather you, like a mother hen gathers her chicks against the destruction. And yet you are not willing. You are not willing. This is the heart of God, for us, for humans. Even though we messed up, even though we're wicked, he does not want to destroy it. He does not want that to happen. So,
But what is the desire in our hearts? Is the question.
that's the question. Will we be faithful covenant partners with God? Will we reflect his Siddiqon Mishpat? Will we be meaningfully connected to him? Or will we be like Lot, corrupted by the desires of ourselves and the desires of this world? Will we look back? Will we long for the city? Will we not listen to God? Will we have to be dragged away? And even then, it's so, like you said, the infection's so in us that we look back. Or will we be like, in this case, Abraham, who's meaningfully connected to God, has the heart of God, has the motives of God, goes to try to preserve even those who don't deserve it, right? This is the heart of God. This is what God does. And so in this story right here, Abraham does reflect the heart of God.
All right. I think that's a great place to close for now. This has been Character Study,
Man,
looking at Abraham.
I'm never going to look at
Lot,
salt again. Never going to look at
Lot's
salt
wife,
again.
you know?
It's some Lot's wife on my eggs. Oh no.
Yeah, that girl on the salt package with the salt
Oh yeah.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot
Don't
better
look
than
back.
it's a lot better than putting Lot's wife on the container. I'll tell you that much. Just the girl in the raincoat. That's good. That'll work. Yeah. All right. I'm John Fortt. This is Dave Tieche. All right. We'll see you next time.